On this week's episode of I'm Tired of Having an 8 a.m. class, we're going to be talking about my new obsession with Penelope Douglas. And I'm sorry if you can hear, little footsteps. That's my dog. She won't sit down. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's mental illness, isn't it? Okay, so Penelope Douglas is an author that I had never heard about before getting into BookTube. Specifically watching Chandler Ainsley, who her recommendations, so good. So I started reading Penelope Douglas because of Chandler's interest in her and her opinions on her books. So I've only read 3. I'm not exactly sure how many books she has because I'm scared to look because I know I'm going to read every single one. But the books that I have read, Crazy, You Will Become Hooked, Addicted, perhaps, Problematic, Taboo, but very well written. The first book that I read by Penelope Douglas was Birthday Girl. This story is about a girl, which, I've talked about it before, but it's a girl who is pretty much neglected by her boyfriend. He's not there, whether it's physically, emotionally, he's just not really available. So the boyfriend and her don't make enough money to live on their own, so they end up having to move in with his father, the boyfriend's father. So much tension, so much build up between the girlfriend, and the father. Now, she is 18 or 19, and the father's 38, so do with that what you will. What I've come to find out is that Penelope Douglas's ability to raise tension is immaculate. There are so many books, I'm sure you guys have read, whether it's enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, some sort of taboo relationship to lovers, whatever it is, where there's like a short moment of tension and, halfway through the book, there already like some sort of sexual encounter has happened, which is it's not a bad thing. But for me, I love the tension more than the actual sex part of it. We all know how that stuff works, and sometimes it's really fun to read about depending on if it's crazy or not. But the tension itself can just be done in so many different ways that it's new and exciting every time. So essentially Birthday Girl is, about the girl falling in love with her boyfriend's father, realizing herself throughout the way, realizing what she wants in life, and noticing that her boyfriend that she has cannot give it to her because of just where he is in his life, and it's just not compatible. I first heard Chandler talking about this book. I just love age gaps as long as they're done in a way that's not creepy and predatory, as long as they're done in a way that actually develops characters and you can see, the internal monologues and thoughts and feelings of these characters, and it's not just I want her because she looks like a teenager and I'm a 70-year-old man. I'm gonna get into spoilers now for Birthday Girl. I'm gonna put a little spoiler card up. I love the fact that in the first chapter you see that she's meeting her boyfriend's father without realizing that it was him, and her being like, wow, this guy is what is it about him that I'm obsessed with? You already know that it's the father that she's meeting, but just to see her being wow, he's really attractive. And I'm yes, ma'am. He's pushing 40. Of course he is. For me, it was kind of cliche that her boyfriend cheated on her in the pool with whatever the girl, because we knew he was emotionally not there. He was physically not there. It was kind of did you have to throw that in? But I just also don't like cheating necessarily to enhance the plot. You know what I mean? Granted, this book is not really plot heavy. It's literally about a girl falling in love with her boyfriend's father. Again, I just don't like cheating to prove a point or to further the plot. I think it's kind of redundant at this point. Penelope's writing was just so good. And also another cliche thing is how not there the boyfriend was. Yes, it was meant to be he's not giving her what she needs, but also what I've seen in fan fiction and stuff is that the main 2 characters, or whoever's gonna fall in love, or whoever's the story is about, everyone else on the sidelines kind of disappear until they're needed. And in real life, that's not usually how it works. I'm the type of person that does not necessarily enjoy epilogues, but not saying that I want an open ending or that I want a nicely closed ending, but I feel like epilogues are kind of like, this is what happened, and there you go, and now you have to think about this. But for an epilogue to show like 5-10 years later when the characters have a family or whatever, it's like, I mean, that's nice and stuff, but we could have probably inferred that. I really liked just the whole thing, just how when they finally got together, he was so just like obsessed with her, you know, but like in a loving, not creepy way. Like he just like loved her so much and learned about so much and wanted to be there for her in the best way possible. I also think he should have like beat his son. Like, what a dickhead. Like, he did, like, did the son do anything right? Genuinely. I also would have loved more about the past abuser. Either you're going to go full force and that's going to be a big part of it, or it's not going to be a big part of it and you should just not have mentioned it. I feel like the abuser part of it wasn't necessary. Again, it was only to fuel the plot, but it wasn't that heavy. But it was so good. I love Birthday Girl. The second book I read after Birthday Girl was Punk 57. But what this is about is two pen pals that became friends for like a school activity or something. They're in separate schools, and they each had their own like pen pal requirement. And then after the requirement was met, these two people kept in contact. So we have Misha and we have Ryan. Ryan's the girl, Misha's the guy, and I love that name. They promise that they'll never send pictures, they'll never check social media for each other, they'll never like meet up in real life because they want to keep this illusion of just being best friends. Like there's literally nobody in either of their lives that they trust more than the person that they're writing to. Misha and Ryan actually end up living only 30 minutes away from each other. So years and years later, when they're both teenagers, Misha is at this party with his band and like a whole bunch of people. And he sees this girl and it ends up being Ryan. He checks social media and sees that the picture on social media is this girl, but he doesn't tell her who he is the whole book until like the end. So that's essentially the whole book, is him knowing who she is and being in her life in some sort of capacity, but her having no idea who he is because he changes his name. And there are some dark elements in here. I'm not going to say it's anything that will surprise you. Like, it's nothing insane. But that's it for the spoiler-free version. The spoiler version, let's talk about it. Okay, so I love a good problematic character. I, at times, hated Misha. She was crazy. Literally how everything tied together. Okay, he left his sister after he saw her get in the car. She has a heart attack. She calls him, but he thinks she's only calling about the snacks that he promised her. So he doesn't answer the multiple times that she calls. She ends up dying. And then that night, that he's at the party is when he sees Ryan. So the whole thing, and how he was so obsessed with Ryan and just looking at her and being around her that he neglected his sister. And so then come to find out, Ryan saw a name in the paper where the town where Misha lived, that a girl died. And the name, I guess Misha only called his sister by the nickname Annie. So Ryan didn't know that Anastasia was actually Annie. So she, was talking about, hey, this, Anastasia girl died on this road. Did you know her? And then Misha never replies. And then it's like months later, and then Misha changes his name and goes to school. And it like, what? And then the thing with the principal and the stepson, and oh my god, this book, I have like chills. This book, it just went so many different directions, and you're like, what the fuck does this mean? What does it mean? And then at the end, it all comes together, and it makes so much sense, and you see what like a piece of shit Misha was to Ryan and to others and to himself, but the reason why. In one sense, I did not like the fact that they had sex or did things of that nature, and he didn't tell her who he was, just paired with how he treated her and how he just lied to her, and they did so many things together. I don't know. It kind of like made me a little bit uncomfortable. It wasn't inherently wrong, and I know maybe that's why some people love the book because of that aspect of it, which is fine. Like I said, I love Penelope Douglas. But I would say that if you don't like that, maybe not the best. I think also the end of it was just a little bit fast paced because I really liked the part where Ryan found out who he was and wanted nothing to do with him. And I think that her forgiving him or them coming together was just a little bit too fast. I really, really enjoyed Punk 57. And again, I'm going to be purchasing this used as soon as I can save money because I just keep spending my money, and Starbucks does not pay me enough to spend that much money. The third book, Jesus is here with me now. He's going to hold my hand through this because I certainly needed him when I read this book. It's Credence. It came out the 13th or the 14th of January. It is not for the faint of heart. I will absolutely tell you that, and this is not being dramatic. It is a story about a girl, Tiernan, who just lost her parents. So she didn't want to go through all the trouble of emancipating herself since she was almost 18. So the only living relative or guardian that she had was her step uncle. So it was her father's stepbrother. She has never met him before, and I wanna make this clear. This is not incestuous, and I saw some of the reviews saying it was. They literally said it was her uncle and her cousins, and that's not it. He was the stepbrother to her father. If that makes you uncomfortable, I would not recommend this book. They're not blood, and she has no relationship with them. She's never met them. So her step uncle is her legal guardian now, and she just decides to go live with him because she's almost 18 anyway, so that it would just be too much work to emancipate herself. So her step uncle Jake has two sons, Noah and Caleb, and they're her step cousins. Again, not related, no relationship, it's just the title. The summary of this book, she goes to live with them. They live in Colorado, I believe. So they live on top of this mountain or this peak, and it's in a really small town, and they, basically provide for themselves. Like they hunt, they fish, they have horses and chickens and all that fun stuff. And so there is a lot of tension. Like, I've only read 2 Penelope Douglas books, and it's more than those 2. More than any book I've ever read. Trigger warnings for this. If you're uncomfortable with the step family situation, there's that, of course. It's not incestuous, but again, up to your discretion. There's age gap. There is a little bit of forcefulness. There is just a toxic sort of relationship. Questionable sexual encounters. I will say there is no blatant rape, but there are some very shady and very murky things. Very, very murky. And a lot of high tension. Just think about it this way. It's a girl with 3 very attractive men that she's not related to up on a peak that she gets there in August, but by winter time they're all snowed in, and for months they're all alone together. So I'm just gonna let that go. Holy God, it was done in such an intense and powerful way that I could not put my book down, or my little Kindle. So for the spoiler version, if you're interested in any of the trigger warnings that I said, I will give the actual scenes, and then I'll talk about just the book as a whole. So there's a scene when Caleb, who is mute, selectively mute, he is bringing a deer in that he killed to the garage, and he sees Tiernan, who's getting her clothes from the washer dryer or whatever. He sees her. He kind of looks at her for a while. Obviously, he doesn't say anything. She doesn't know that. And he, backs her up against the wall, which, again, She doesn't say no to. And you see it from her perspective, and she's like, wow, like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, there's just something about him, blah, blah, blah. So she's into it. Let me make that clear. But he, kisses her, is about to have sex with her, and she's like, stop, no, what are you doing? And then he would, like, pull away, and then her internal monologue would be like, holy shit, like, what am I doing? Like, why am I letting this happen? And then he would start again, and then eventually got to the point where she was like, okay, literally stop. I'm not even questioning it anymore, just stop. And so I think she slaps him, and he gets angry, and then Noah, the brother, comes down and, like, pulls him away. So there's that. Something else like that is even worse is, again, with Caleb. They are having sex willingly, and he's going too hard. Like, she is like, please stop, like, it hurts. She didn't say stop to the sex. She wanted him to not be so harsh and severe, but he didn't listen to her, and that's when she was like, okay, I'm done. I don't agree with. I don't think that is something that you should put in a character that you want to be redeeming. That scene with the internal dialogue that you see from her perspective, it's much more difficult to pinpoint what was actually happening. Another trigger warning for the age gap is, I am not in support of this, but like I said, Tiernan was 17 when she went to live with them. And before she turned 18, she was in the kitchen at night with her step-uncle, Jake, and they did not have sex, but they did stuff. And she wanted it to happen. It was not murky at all. She definitely was like, I literally want to sleep with him. I want to have sex with him. But he is like 40, and at that time she was 17, and he did stop himself. There was just basically touching. And kissing. There wasn't anything second or third base, But here's the thing. If you know someone as, a grown adult, and they're 16, 17, and then they turn 18, and you've known them for those years, and then you're like, okay, time to have sex with them. Problematic. Don't agree with that. If you meet someone that is 18 and you've only known them as an adult and you're like, want to have sex with them, that is okay, because they're a consenting adult and you didn't literally watch them go from a child to an adult, which I feel like is a little problematic. A little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But it was so taboo. Like, in Birthday Girl, when the girl met the father, she was already 19. The father had never met her when she was a child. So it wasn't so much focused on that. In this book, it was very much well known that she was 17 when Jake, was attracted to her. Nothing happens sexually until after she's 18. Other than that one instance, which was questionable. But, I mean, it's Penelope Douglas for you. She's not going to give you, sweet and pristine. So the book is just filled with so much shit. Now we're just going to get into, like, the real spoilers. Listen. She has sex with Jake in the car and loses her virginity to him. And it's like, that's great, but when he wanted to have sex with her in the first place, she was 17, and I was like, well, at least she's 18 now. At least we have that little bit of sense. So she has sex with Jake, and then on her, what was it? The night of her 18th birthday, it was before she had sex, she almost had sex with Noah and Caleb at once. They literally almost had a threesome. That scene is when I needed Jesus the most. I was like, I didn't even know. I watched Chandler Ainsley's, like, vlog of her reading that scene. Bitch. Listen. Okay. So okay. Jake is nowhere to be found in the house. Tiernan just turned 18. her and Noah are sitting on the same couch and Caleb's sitting in a chair away, and they're just watching regular TV. And then, you know, things start to get steamy, and Noah starts talking about what they do in the winter because, you know, there's no girls there, and they're all man whores, and talking about what they do in the winter. And he tells Tiernan, he's like, you should leave the room because they put porn on. Because he's like, this is what we do in the winter. They put it on, and he's like, you should leave the room because he's like unbuckling his belt. And she doesn't leave the room. So, I mean, it's fine because she's consenting and she's like, I'm going to stay here. So then all three of them are like involved in their own individual quests for happiness, you know? So they're doing that, and then they literally, she almost has a threesome with them. Like, she's getting to the point where she's like, yep, absolutely, it's happening. And then Jake comes in and spoils the moment. And so, you know, however long later, her and Jake have sex, and then she still is attracted to Noah and Caleb. And so then, like, eventually Noah and Caleb and her have a threesome, and it is just the most, I say this in the best way possible, like, vile scene. I can't even go into descriptives because I don't want to get in trouble. It's a lot. They are both enjoying her at once. And that's all I'm going to say. And so I don't know. It's freaking crazy. I will say, I love a good, bad character, and I don't mean like a bad boy. I mean like a character that's inherently bad, and to see development or to see insight. There were aspects to Caleb that I really enjoyed learning about, and I was like, oh, he can redeem himself. There were aspects to him that were, to me, unforgivable. He had a traumatic event happen to him where he was locked in a car for 4 days when he was, 3 or 4? And since then, he has never spoken. And his mom is the one that left him in there because she went and got high and forgot about him. So he has a lot of issues with women. But again, he is a full-grown adult, and yes, he is stunted in that way, but not to the severity that these things should have happened. So, for example, I think it was after Tiernan had sex with Jake, and Noah and Caleb, you know, found out about it. And Caleb literally, like pushed her into her room, held her down on her bed, spit on her, and wrote slut on her forehead in Sharpie. Sorry, is that supposed to make me like him more? Is that supposed to make me want them together? I mean, yeah, he is a bad character, and it's okay that he did that, but then don't try and spin it and be like, oh, it's because he loved her and he was hurt. I mean, there are, like, other aspects where he, like, spilled milk and threw oatmeal at her, which, like, that is forgivable. That is just, like, being petty and childish, right? Like, that's super annoying, but it's not demeaning. And the fact of the whole tone of this book was every guy could sleep with whoever they wanted. But Tiernan was held back by all three of them. And yeah, I love a protective figure, a male protective figure that's like, don't wear that out because people, you like, might get into trouble, rather than don't wear that out because people think you're a slut, you know? Like, for your own safety is one thing, but because I want to be possessive of you in a unhealthy way is another thing. So I did not like the tone of that book because every single guy could sleep with whoever they wanted, but little Tiernan could only sleep with them and only them. And it was like Caleb really spit on her and wrote slut on her forehead, and then we're supposed to be happy that they got together. Sorry. If anybody ever, first of all, even just spit on me, even just held me against my will, let alone write the word slut across my forehead, are you fucking kidding me? Because she slept, as an adult, she's 18, she slept with a man that Caleb didn't want her to sleep with because Caleb loved her and blah, blah, blah. And then you see his like writings or whatever about, you know, life and stuff, and then sometimes about Tiernan saying like that he hated her and she was a slut and all women are evil and blah blah blah. Okay, incel, settle down. Life does not revolve around you. Women in your life that have ever left you, that's on them. Okay? It's not every woman. Not every woman. But it's just like Penelope could have made Caleb into a bad character without making him, in my eyes, unredeemable. And that's kind of what she did. I really still enjoyed this book because just purely out of how fastly I read it and how it made my heart race and how it made me happy or excited or really angry. In that sense, I liked it. But there were just some aspects that I wish would have been different or toned down, because it was just like, how are we supposed to forgive him for doing that? Like, that's a lot. And it was just that one thing. And then with everything else, and very problematic person. And at the end, he speaks. He reads a book to himself alone to learn how to, you know, pronounce things, because he hasn't spoken since he was, 4? And the sentiment is nice. It's a nice sentiment. But he still spit on her and held her down and wrote slut on her forehead, so I'm not sure how I feel. And also threw away her birth control pills. Listen, she's 18. They weren't even, like dating, actually, because she was just stuck in the house with them. And she missed her period for, 3 days and then had it, and then was just, looking at her belly in the mirror when Noah and Caleb walked in. And Caleb, I guess, became obsessed with the idea that she became pregnant with his child and, threw away her birth control, even though she was like, no. And then he did it, and she was like, no, hey, don't. And then he did it. And then she was like, aw, he always gets his way. And it's like, do we live in 1804? Is this the time where women had no rights? Or, I mean, it seemed that way on the peak, because every man in her life decided everything for her. If she wasn't happy enough, they were like, quit being a bitch. If she was too happy and enjoying herself, they were like, quit being a slut. And it's like, I like taboo subjects like that. It's not a big deal, but it was just like, then they were redeemed and fine and funky and fresh. And just for that, just that one thing, just a redeemable quality, or maybe they changed what they did. I wish it was different. But yeah, Credence was a lot. And if things bother you, don't read it, because you're not gonna like it. If you're looking for something to argue about, I mean, go ahead. That's on you. You're just cutting years of your life. I wasn't expecting a lot of the stuff, and I didn't like a lot of the stuff. But purely the enjoyment level for me was what kept me reading. And I know it's a book, so I'm not taking it too much to heart. You know what I mean? There are some books that, it's unforgivable, but Penelope Douglas, and as I've read her other books, I trust her. And I trust that her judgment, if nothing is stated clearly as being as bad as you might infer, I'm going to trust that it's not as bad as I might infer. So, yeah, I mean, it's a heavy book, I'm not going to lie to you. And there's a lot of tension, and 3 different guys, So, a lot of people didn't like it. If those topics are okay, I suggest reading it, because holy shit. If you don't believe in God, you might after this, because you're going to need someone to get you through some of those scenes. But I think that's it. This video is long enough. And it was only about 3 books. I'm so sorry. With that, I think I'm done. I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. And, maybe I'll just do a Penelope Douglas haul every month at this rate. At this rate of reading so many of her books. But yeah, just thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.